Hey everybody, we got a new shirt in our store for 2 weeks only. Help support the Smoking Tire through this very tough time. The guys at Blipshift nailed this design so hard. One of my favorite movies of all time, The Cannonball Run, we spoofed the poster. Zach is Roger Moore, me is Burt Reynolds. I'm probably a little more of a Dom DeLuise type, but it's looking good with our cars and everything. Go to blipshift.com/TST or hit the link in wherever I'm telling you to hit the link, YouTube, Instagram, and get yourself one. 2 weeks only, sale ends April 16th. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Malibu Canyons. It's a nice quiet morning here as we continue our quarantine pretty much. Fortunately, someone like me, work by myself in the middle of nowhere, it's okay to continue working, I guess. I'm not touching stuff outside my own car. Anyway, first, a bit of crow that I need to eat. In our last week's video with the Volvo V60 Polestar engineered, I described the different engine specifications of Volvo's range, T4, T5, T6, T8. And I pretty much described it like Volvo did it like 10 years ago. And I did not accurately describe what Volvo is doing now. The truth is, it's more complicated than that. Some of you called me out on it correctly, and that's okay. I'm not going to spend this whole video describing Volvo's entire powertrain range, but it's not as simple as I described in the other video. So for the Volvo fans out there, my bad for not doing that research all the way. Here we are in what I think is my favorite Volvo. This is the new 2020 XC90 Inscription. So this is pretty much as high-end as this XC90 gets. And there is a pretty big spread, actually. A couple years ago, I saw Pearl Jam in Amsterdam and did a little mini road trip with my friends Travis and Thaddeus. We rented an XC90 in Europe, and it was comfortable and spacious. We're all over 6 feet tall, but it was the base model. And I really didn't like the driving dynamics of that base gas-powered front-wheel drive stripped out model. It was very rubbery and numb and not what I was looking for at all. Other end of the spectrum, the Inscription, this thing is nice. So this one is the T8 twin engine, fundamentally the same powertrain as we saw in that V60 Polestar edition. It combines a 2-liter 4-cylinder gasoline engine in the front with a turbocharger and a supercharger. It then combines an 11.6 kilowatt hour battery pack and a 65 kilowatt motor in the back, creating that all-wheel drive system independently working from each other, right? A software-connected all-wheel drive system for a combined horsepower of 400 horsepower and 472 pound-feet of torque. You also get about 20 miles of EV-only range with this plug-in hybrid system, and it has the onboard charge mode, so you can it can charge itself. Now, the XC90 for 2020, it has a new regenerative braking mode that really cranks up the regen. If you've ever driven a Prius, the B mode, that's what this has now, that B mode. It's, what is else for new? New 6-seat configuration, right? So we got captain's chairs in the middle. Love the captain's chairs. They are the best. And then there's new 21-inch wheels on this one with Pirelli Scorpion Verde tires. There's a new shaped grille. All right. So the performance of this T8 is 0 to 60 in 5.8 and a top speed of 140 miles an hour. This isn't a Range Rover SVR, and it doesn't pretend to be. Those are extremely respectable numbers for a 6-seat, 5,000-pound SUV. The suspension architecture is a double wishbone front with a transverse composite leaf spring in the rear. 3 seconds. What else uses that setup? If you said C7 Corvette, you are right. It has the same architecture, the suspension, as a C7 Corvette uses, and this one has the optional air suspension, which has an incredibly cool feature with a button in the trunk where I can press it and lower or raise the suspension for loading stuff in and out from the back while the car is off. It rules. So let's go into dynamic mode. ESC Sport off. We'll hit our drive mode for power, for sporty driving. I've driven in charge mode all the way up here, so I've got a full 20 miles indicated of battery, and let's have a drive. Power mode changes the gauge cluster from your hybrid EV gauge to a standard TAC. It gives you pretty much maximum output from that electric motor, but it should also give maximum regen under braking. We're going to go up this road here. Like that gas one I was talking about before that I rented, this thing is pretty numb. Now, the 21-inch wheels, the sportier tuned suspension, and the hybrid system do give it dynamic advantages, substantial dynamic advantages over the base model, for sure. This is a nice truck. 82 grand as tested, okay, which I don't even think gets you into a full-size Range Rover. And this thing, from a quality perspective, is right up there with, and I mean materials, fit and finish quality. I'm not talking about reliability. This is probably substantially better than Range Rover when it comes to that stuff. The materials in here, the leather, it's awesome. The visors are wrapped in leather. The whole headliner is suede. They give you a leather-wrapped iPod cable, matching leather-wrapped iPod cable. That's gangster. If you know of another car that gives you a matching leather-wrapped iPod cable, put that in the comments. I haven't actually seen that before. It feels reasonably quick and sprightly on its feet. It's not fun in the canyons. It's not my choice of canyon car. But if you had to traverse a windy road with your family in the XC90, you could certainly do worse. As a Volvo engineer pointed out to me after our Polestar video, the EV powertrain does cut out above a certain speed. I don't remember if he told me 70 or 90 miles an hour where it does cut out, but after a certain point, the power of the gas engine becomes more useful and the power of the electric engine becomes more either parasitic or just not useful, and so it cuts out, leaving you with a 300 horsepower, 4-cylinder, front-wheel drive powertrain above that speed. So your high-speed acceleration is not really the same, cyclist, is not really the same as if you had a 400 horsepower gas engine where that power is available at higher speeds. It's not exactly the same, but what we're finding with Volvo, both here in the XC90 and with the V60 we drove last week, is that it's much more pragmatic. Something like $150,000 supercharged Range Rover SVR or a Cayenne Turbo or those true kind of super SUVs, those exist not because you need it, but because you want it. You might need it. Why would I ever need to go 187 miles an hour in a Maserati Levante Trofeo? I wouldn't, but for that much money, I'd like to know I can. Volvo kind of gets rid of a lot of the I'd like to know I can. They make a car that is absolutely brilliant at everyday use. It's absolutely brilliant if 90% of people are honest with how they drive. So this thing feels really fast from like 25 to 70. Isn't that where you want your everyday car to feel really fast? Does it matter how your SUV accelerates over 100? Not really. So Volvo does this incredible job with creating this beautiful cocoon where everything you touch feels really expensive. The wood, the metals, the leather. Where you put your butt is, I mean, this seat, this is one of the best seats I've ever sat in any car at any price. And certainly considering the cost of this, which is $82,000 as tested, I think it's a lot of money. But you get a lot of seat for your money. I mean, it's beautifully adjustable and really nicely sculpted. Like ergonomically, I'm probably good for like 12 hours in this thing. I mean, it's great. The The air suspension creates a really nice ride combined with the geometry. It's not overly harsh, and you really don't get a lot of slop. I'm going to make a U-turn here. I'm not going to go up Latigo because 5,000-pound SUVs in Latigo Canyon are not, what's up? Quite a lot of, you have to do a lot of inputting in the wheel, right? It's not a super fast steering rack. You do have to put in more inputs than your average sedan, but and there isn't a lot of feel there either. But I am confident in the grip, right? It stays pretty flat with just a hint of body roll that lets you know what's going on. Go left here. We can go look at the snake being closed if we want to go to the right. The snake is still closed. Four-cylinder engine. Here we go. Listen. It's not an inspiring sound, but totally inoffensive, remains, plenty distant from the cabin. Unless you're going to put an inspiring engine there, then just make it inoffensive and make it, give me a nice wide torque band, which it's got. I would love, if I had a family and more people to carry around, to use something like this as a daily driver. On the highway, on a cruise, in the city, I use this thing for 3 or 4 days without using any gas at all. I mean, 20 miles EV doesn't sound like much if you live in the suburbs, okay? And maybe it's not. If you live in a major metro area and your time in the car is spent in traffic and not at, 80 on the freeway, I honestly think 20 miles of EV range really does put a dent in your gas usage day to day, especially if you're like me, where you're doing a lot of local errands. I mean, even my cumulative my cumulative miles per gallon over a couple hundred miles of driving is in the middle 20s. I'm at 25 miles per gallon. For a 5,000-pound truck, to average 25 miles per gallon is pretty good. Pretty good indeed. Good grip there. Really not upset by bumps at the mid-corner, which I like. It's not like the Levante where I want to huck it into a corner. I don't. I just want to make it through the corner without it being upset and doing funky stuff, which it's not doing. It's quite good. I like the brake feel. Easy to modulate. Yep, right here, mid-corner. Yep, there it is. And another mid-corner yump here. Yeah, quite good. It feels very composed. We're not going slow. I mean, we're not going Lambo speed, but we're not going slow. This is nice. I think Audi still does a digital gauge cluster a little better than Volvo does. The screen has a little more detail to it, but I happen to like Volvo's cluster. I think they do it. It's very clear, very legible. Sorry, my case in the back. I didn't strap it down. I apologize. I like Volvo's touchscreen a lot. They call it Sensus, which is very sensual. This Bowers & Wilkins stereo sounds great. Optional, but this car's got it. The touchscreen is good. It's not amazing. It's not blowing my mind. Actually, although it didn't look like much, the Maserati Levante touchscreen from last week, which is based on Uconnect, it wasn't fancy schmancy, but it responded really fast, which I love. This one is fancy schmancy, and it's very visually appealing, and it's very clear. It doesn't blind you at night, but it's like a hair back on the responsiveness. They still, only Tesla and Chrysler and Porsche have really nailed the touchscreen so far. However, I will say, I do like that Volvo has put a lot of the driver controls right on one of the home menus on the touchscreen. For instance, this thing has so many safety features in it. It's like there's safety features all over the place. I don't like the lane keeping aid. It just drives me nuts. Give me the parking aid, okay, the cross traffic alert for when I'm backing up and I can't see, for things I might not see, I get it. But I am capable of steering a vehicle in a lane. And so I turned that off, but I like that it's just right here and easy to see, easy to find. I don't have to dig through 100 menus and know if I got it right or not. Speaking of driver's aids, when I rented that XC90 2 years ago, in Europe, the radar cruise control was a little laggy and kind of, not buggy is not the right word, but you really needed to be clear of the cars in front of you before it started initiating a pass, etc. They have done slow, continuous upgrades to this system, and I just used it for about an hour yesterday on the freeway, and the improvements have made the radar cruise much more fluid, much smoother in how it responds to other cars, and they've really done a very nice job of that. I really am impressed with the subtle, nuanced improvements. It's not often I get to drive the same car that many years apart, but it's one thing I did notice, and I definitely did appreciate. All right. So that's the XC90. It's not a sports car or a supercar, but if you want the serenity experience, tactile feel of something like a Range Rover, but you don't want to drive like a complete dick. You want to drive like a normal human being, not like an aggro, road ragey meathead. And you're kind of honest with yourself about that. I think you could save a whole lot of money by not going for that six-figure super SUV and instead going with something like this, where for $80,000 you get one of the finest interiors available, you get a really interesting, technically advanced powertrain. By the way, that video used up 50% of our battery. We're now down to 11 miles of EV range, and you have something that's sort of green. It really does try to be a little of everything to everybody, and what's strange is that is so rarely successful, and here it really is. So bravo to Volvo XC90. And oh, by the way, it's still great looking. It looks awesome. What a beautiful, beautiful vehicle this is. I think this is still the gold standard of luxury SUVs, where insane, unnecessary performance is not really a factor. And they really have figured out where, at least for me, if I'm honest with my day-to-day needs for an SUV, this meets or exceeds really every single one of them. And for what you're getting, the price is reasonable. So thank you to Volvo for letting me have a go and continuing to bring me cars during this very difficult time and doing the clean handoffs. Love it. And thank you to you for watching, and we'll see you later. Bye.